He is Shane Lachlan Black, the internet's original stunt writer.
I mean, you're the lunatic who's responsible for almost destroying my ship?
I've just watched one of the trailers for Starfleet Academy, and I'm fairly certain at this point it would be dereliction on my part to avoid talking about it. Now, I'm in kind of a unique situation here. I have no ill will towards the people who created this television show. I'm an author myself. I have a rather significant body of work, including one of the largest single-character science fiction series in print. I fully intend to show others the same professional courtesy that I would expect in return. At the same time, there are significant points that need to be made here that apply far beyond any one writer or creative team's interpretation of this material. Star Trek is America's heroic epic. James T. Kirk is our culture's equivalent to Achilles. The idea of a wagon train to the stars resonates very deeply with both America's values and her history. Adding the concepts of military duty and educational achievement would provide any author with magnificent opportunities to entertain, edify, and teach audiences things they might otherwise never encounter. Now, I realize I'm speaking of a show I have not yet seen, and I am fully cognizant of the fact I could very well be wrong. That said, I have some things to put on the record about what I've seen so far. Star Trek invited us to explore and to reach beyond what we see around us. It came to be at a very pivotal time in our past, when our eyes really were looking to the heavens. For the briefest of moments, we were a civilization looking towards what we believed was a brighter future. This is one among many reasons I consider shows like Starfleet Academy an enormous wasted opportunity. The key to understanding the deficits in shows like these is to understand Star Trek was created by men and women who survived World War II. Their values were among the reasons they came home. When they looked back, they discovered they had something to say about the events they had witnessed and experienced. They all intended to make the world a better place because they had lived through the alternative. The spirit that drove them to create television shows like Star Trek can be heard in every spoken word and every script. This is one of the reasons the ideals of that original television show endure. You'll find similar results from shows like The Twilight Zone and MASH, and films like Midway and Patton. There were timeless portrayals of brave and competent men and women pushing the human adventure beyond what conventional wisdom tended to dictate. The idea of a futuristic space academy is replete with imaginative opportunities. As a screenwriter, you would be directly educating viewers about the future by drawing on serious topics we're already familiar with. It is the selection of which topics to explore that always seems to miss the mark. I'd like to detail a few examples. The purpose of a military academy. And for purposes of this analysis, we will assume Starfleet Academy is still graduating officers to a combined service, as Kirk calls it in the original series, is to train young men and women to become officers. These are not general crew members, they're not enlisted personnel, they're not specialists, they're not contractors. They are presumably candidates for commissions in Starfleet, men and women who would be expected to lead others in matters of duty aboard starships, on alien planets, and on missions to deep space. These would be men and women placed in command roles. A sobering set of responsibilities at the very least. A military academy would be primarily concerned with matters of fitness. Cadets would be expected to complete rigorous physical training so as to be capable of enduring the challenges they would have to overcome to be qualified as officer candidates. There would be immense academic requirements, tackling subjects like science, mathematics, history, philosophy, tactics, navigation, survival, basic medicine, and then doing all of those things in zero gravity in an EVM suit. Candidates would have to acquire basic competency with every system aboard a starship. They would need experience disassembling and repairing those systems. Like Lieutenant Savick in Star Trek II, they would have to understand why things work on a starship. In that film, the lieutenant is portrayed very skillfully. She has tremendous book knowledge, evidenced by her ability to quote general orders by their article numbers, but she is still young and inexperienced and doesn't have the years yet. She doesn't know how to weave her knowledge into practical action. She is an officer, but she's a junior officer. Her job is to learn and gain the experience, and the senior officer's job is to train her to follow their example. One of the most authentic scenes in that film is when Savick politely overreaches and attempts to advise the commanding officer on the tactical priorities in play. It is not Kirk who corrects her. It is Spock, acting in his role as the executive. It is a flawless piece of writing because it nails the proper role of an XO. Later turns out Savick was right, but at that moment, and even though the screenwriter knows what future events will unfold, she's out of line. Kirk is portrayed in the same film as a man with the exact opposite problem from Savick. He is all intuition, having left most of his book knowledge behind decades before. He's out of practice, and he has to reclaim his natural combination of knowledge and instinct. That contrast is one of the driving themes of the film. The reason I bring up these examples is because their absence in what I've seen of Starfleet Academy so far is jarring. It isn't just oversight, it is catastrophic, because it portrays relationships that simply do not exist in an organization tasked with piloting fantastically advanced spacecraft to distant regions of space and attempting to understand what they find. There isn't a moment of science in this trailer, not one mote of futuristic thought regarding what we might have discovered in over 1,000 years of exploration. Now, that's not to say the production values are lacking. This is yet another example of taking a gigantic fire hose of cash and spraying the screen with it. But as we've learned over the years, you need a lot more than slick visuals to get the job done. A show like this starts with the writing, and the writing starts with a cold look at the values behind the story. The first 43 seconds of this 143-second trailer had nothing to do with Starfleet. We started right off on the wrong foot. One of the featured quotes in the trailer is, "Being a cadet means being open to the people around you." No, it doesn't. Being a cadet means you are preparing yourself day and night for the rare opportunity to take an oath as a commissioned officer in Starfleet. When you do, you are taking responsibility for yourself, the men and women you lead, and the ship aboard which you will serve. Even for remarkable people, there are enormous commitments involved. You are accepting a life of duty, honor, and excellence, and you are doing it aboard a spacecraft on a mission of discovery to places mankind has never been. If it weren't so familiar to us now, we might credibly wonder if this is something human beings can even aspire to, much less achieve. But ultimately, that's the whole point. Humans doing remarkable things, a point which is missed in this trailer. At the 155 mark in this trailer, there is a Starfleet captain wearing no shoes, twirling around in her chair, lampshading, while a cadet slouches nearby. And then they both laugh at an unfunny joke. She is the Chancellor of Starfleet Academy. She's not a flag officer, and she also has no shoes. In the real world, the closest equivalent we have would be the Chancellor of the Naval Academy at Annapolis. Now, that billet is for a 3-star officer, either an admiral or recently a Marine general, the first one to serve. There are a grand total of about 30 three-star flag officers in the entire Navy. That's out of 300,000 personnel. It's a rather exclusive club. If a naval cadet walked into the office of a three-star admiral, they would not slouch in a chair. Now, apparently the Academy exists aboard an active duty starship that becomes a building on the surface of Earth, I'm assuming. I'm not going to go into whether a spaceship can become a building. If that's the imagination of the writers, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. Let them run with it, see what they can do with it. But putting the entire Academy aboard a spacecraft and then going out into space on active duty, that seems a little dangerous. One need only go back to the Next Generation episode where the Admiral makes the point that there's only 2 Soong-type androids in existence. If they're both aboard the same ship, one lucky shot from the Romulans or the Klingons and we lose them both. And that's a good point. In this case, you would lose the entire Academy, which would be catastrophic. You lose all your officer candidates and all the teachers at the same time. That doesn't seem to make much sense. Then there's the line, we have multiple injuries but no casualties. This is another example of what I mean when I say you need people to advise the writing team on matters of military values and procedure. The word casualties in a military context does not mean the deceased exclusively. Okay? When you do this, you make the show more authentic and more appealing. Even if you're trying to attract younger audiences, you're still going to get much further if you correctly portray an authentic view of what Starfleet would really be about in the context of training young people to become officers. I will likely have more to say on this topic in future videos. Blackout.
Shane Lachlan Black,